Special thanks to Reddit user 4shotbot for granting me permission to use their story. Please visit their website at 4shotpastastorytelling.com, where you can find all of their works whenever you're craving for some late night reading. Links will be in the description box down below. Now, without further ado, my dear listeners, do enjoy. Hey guys, I don't often frequent these types of sites, but, well, okay, here's the thing. Something happened a while back that's made me question both reality as well as my sanity. Something that would likely have me in a padded room faster than a murderer claiming he killed his family because the voices in his head told him to. I know I'm sane. I have the physical evidence to prove what happened. But regardless, I need to tell someone, anyone. My name is Jeremy, and I'm a programmer. I often go days without sleep to complete a project on time. I don't do drugs or anything like that to stay awake. I mostly just take heart attack-inducing amounts of caffeine. The pay is amazing, and I rarely have to deal with people in person. As a kid, I never saw a point in relationships, so I took to learning something I thought would be useful in the future. At the time, computer programming was much harder to get into, but I managed. Now I'm making more money than both my parents combined, and am living in a nice place in blissful solitude. Unfortunately, anything good that has ever happened to anyone always seemed to have a whiplash effect. I was no different. And it all started with a damn email. I have multiple work emails. One is specifically designated for receiving requests. Another is for receiving payments. The third business email is meant for high-end clients. Now, not many people have that one. I only really check it once a week to make sure my bot is properly filtering any spam and removing my email from spam rosters. On average, I get about one email every couple of months on it. I cannot stress enough just how few people know of this email. At the time, I had been working on a side project. I was on 2 days with no sleep and the bags to show for it. I had just shut off my computer and was about to get into bed when I got a notification on my phone telling me someone was looking for a programmer. It was sent to my high-end address, which wasn't too surprising considering it had been a few months since my last one. I figured it was one of my returning clients asking me for something new. I sat back down at my computer, starting it back up and getting ready to start on whatever this project was. Checking the message, I was surprised to see an email I didn't recognize, but the message itself seemed legit enough. Dear Mr. Riley, I am reaching out to you after getting a recommendation from... I cut the name out for confidentiality. It is our understanding that you specialize in all sorts of programming and are able to do special projects for large sums of money. Enclosed in this email is a description of an SFTP client that does not rely on the internet. We are asking that you please look through the file enclosed in this email as it contains the description for how we would like it made, as well as what we are willing to pay. So as long as you do not reveal this information to anyone, we will pay in full. If you are to accept this offer, half of the money will be sent to your account within seconds. If you do not fulfill your end of the deal, we will ask that you send us the money back as well as additional fees for accepting something that you are not capable of. This will be entirely dependent on how long you take to inform us of the cancellation. If this job is not accepted within an hour, it will be null and you will no longer be able to accept. Have a wonderful day. The wording seemed a bit off from normal business emails, but my bot was working just fine. I even messaged the person they mentioned in the email and they confirmed that they had told someone about me. After a discussion about giving out the address to people without my permission, I went back to the email. After scanning the folder for viruses and not finding any, I downloaded and opened it. They were really going all out for such a simple SFTP client. Of course, they did not want it to be entirely off the social grid, so there must have been a reason for it. While I cannot disclose any details about the program itself, I can say it looked confidential in its own right. One of the more time-consuming parts of the project was luckily already taken care of for me. The security system was something I had been perfecting on my own programs, so I already had one ready. While this may seem unnecessary for something that isn't available to the average person, they specifically requested one that was impenetrable. I kept scrolling, taking brief glances at anything that was unusual for the service. Eventually, I reached the bottom of the list. $20,000 for a simple SFTP. I should clarify that an SFTP is one of the more basic programs, though they tend to be done online. It's for file sharing basically. This one specifically required an auto-sorting system based on certain aspects of each file, which I can't disclose due to confidentiality. Regardless, there was a blaring issue. They wanted it to be done in 2 days. Only 2 days to start and complete a file sorting program. I mean, I knew I could do it, but even that is really pushing it for me. If it were a normal file sorter, I wouldn't even bother putting in the effort. I could have just copied the program from a previously made one I had laying around and changed the programming a little to make it look original. But of course, there were a lot of tiny complex details I won't get into here. There was pretty much just enough to make it longer to implement it into a pre-existing system. That was a lot of babbling, but I wanted to elaborate for those who don't know anything about how all this works. Anyway, the $20,000 was looking really good, so I foolishly accepted it. Just as they said, within seconds the money had been transferred to my account. Guess they aren't playing around, I thought to myself. Better get started right now. I opened my phone, ordering some energy drinks for the project I was about to begin. Cracking my knuckles, I opened my remaining can and my programming software. It was a quick start. I got the basics out of the way first. If I wanted to stay awake, the easy stuff had to be done first. I didn't want to take any chances at falling asleep. About an hour passed before I realized I hadn't noticed any knocks at my door. I figured I must have just been more engrossed in my work than I thought. So I headed to my door. Opening it, I saw the bag of drinks waiting there. I brought them in and set the bag on my kitchen table. I snapped myself out of a stupor when I realized I didn't know how long I had been standing in the same place. I checked my phone to see 3 hours had passed since I brought that bag of drinks in. I decided to take them all over to my desk so I wouldn't have to get up anymore. 3 hours had just disappeared into thin air and I couldn't afford to miss the deadline. Sitting down, I cracked another drink open and continued. I would like to take a moment to explain something. Under most circumstances, losing 3 hours of your life in the span of a second seems like a big deal. It is, and I understand that now. But when you're already days without sleep and you have a deadline to meet, that type of stuff doesn't really faze you. Things like that are why when I saw that dark humanoid out of the corner of my eye, I didn't pay it any mind. When you're sleep deprived, you see things. Time becomes illusory, and you become paranoid. After a couple more hours, I had managed to catch up to where I should have been. Though since I had picked up my pace, there were some simple errors I had to fix which would have added another 20 minutes or so. That was around the time I had to use the toilet. I had been holding it for productivity's sake, but now that I was caught up, I could relieve my bladder. About halfway through taking a piss, I glanced at the mirror above the sink, and if I hadn't already had my pants down, I would have pissed myself. The shadowy humanoid I had been seeing out of the corner of my eye was staring back at me through the mirror for a couple of seconds. The moment my eyes focused, it was like the thing had never been there. My face went cold and I felt like I was about to puke. That thing, while I didn't get a good look, gave off a threatening aura, accompanied by a rancid odor. Like rotting flesh with a strange sweetness to it. After flushing the toilet, I washed my hands and left the bathroom. Thankfully, the smell didn't follow me, and soon enough, I was sitting back down in my chair. I kept telling myself it was just a sleep-deprived hallucination. There wasn't really a smell, and that thing was just the image my subconscious made to keep itself from being bored. After a little bit of calming myself down, I checked the time and fear crept back up my spine. I had been in the bathroom for 3 hours. I got a couple of strong caffeine pills I had been saving for a rainy day and downed them with another big gulp of anxiety juice. I refused to let sleep deprivation get the better of me, so I focused on the task at hand. I typed relentlessly for the next 3 hours. Getting far more done than I thought was possible in that amount of time. I had more than made up for any time I could have lost. That was around the time another one of those dark figures appeared in the corner of my other eye. Not only that, but they both appeared to be closer than when I'd seen them in the past. I smacked my face with both hands to keep myself tethered to consciousness. Fuck off, you lil. Typically when I tell them to go away, they back off. I know they aren't real, but it helps with the anxiety of people being in my home. But this time, my hallucinations became all too real. The one to my right was suddenly right up against my side, covering my mouth with his hand, cutting off any other verbal demands. It was cold, and smelled like that sweet rotting smell from before. It hissed into my ear with a cadence of all that damned souls in hell screaming at once. Time is running thin. You better hope you finish, boy. If not... The thing chuckled. Well, it won't be slow. I nodded my head, too terrified to say anything. Even if it was a hallucination, that felt way too real. The thing slowly released its hand from my mouth and moved back to its position in the corner of my right eye. I checked the bottom of my main monitor to see another 5 hours had slipped between the cracks. I couldn't worry about something so trivial as the monsters my brain had made up. Soon enough, I hit the 24-hour mark with no more incidents. That's about the time the third one appeared, at the top center of my perception. The other two had taken to ignoring my threats but hadn't come much closer. But now this one, I could see its head right above my main monitor. It sort of just appeared while I was focusing on one of the more tedious parts of my work. When I looked up at the thing, it didn't go away. Instead, it had a toothless grin, letting the scent of rot seep out of its cracked lips. I gagged and looked at how much time had passed. 4 a.m. 21 hours left. I was running on fumes and caffeine and had to finish it. Minimum, it would be another 12 hours before I finished. Under ideal circumstances anyway. These weren't ideal circumstances. I had been awake for just over 3 days and was running low on drinks. On top of that, I had a migraine and back pains. To top it all off, the creatures were growing closer. Their darkness penetrated my soul as I managed to force myself to keep typing. 4 hours passed before the first one touched me. It was the creature on my right. It had begun dragging its dark, blistered, rotting finger up and down my arm. With each stroke, I became more and more uneasy. None of my hallucinations had ever manifested as physical touch before. The finger was cold, lifeless, and reeked of maggot-infested beef. "How are you feeling, boy? I hope for your sake, you can handle your own mind." The thing hissed before letting out a wheezing laugh. "What are you?" I asked, trying to hold back my fear. "We are what you fear. A physical manifestation of your worst nightmare. We are what lurks in your walls at night. We are why you struggle to make friends. Why you can't manage to fall asleep after 2 days. Your fear is us, and we are your fear." The voice was as smooth as sandpaper. As he wheezed out each syllable, I found my anxiety rising. "What do you want with me?" "We want to be free. Sever the string that binds us to you. That is what we want." I couldn't talk anymore as the creature to my left aggressively latched onto my arm. It spoke. "Sever the string so we may rise." It was a similar voice, but more playful than monotone. Then the right. "Sever the string so we may live." The third, who was suddenly behind me, spoke in a much deeper voice than the other two. "Sever the string so we may live, Jeremy. It is in your best interest." They all hissed at once. "Sever it." I was having a mental breakdown by this point. The one to my right had begun gripping my arm tight. The one to my left was still latching on. And the one behind me was pushing me down, holding me in place. "You aren't real," I cried out. "None of you are real. I'm going to finish this and fall asleep. When I wake up, you'll be gone, and there's nothing you can do about it." Tears were still streaming down my face, and with shaky hands, I managed to continue the project with only 12 hours left. By now, I wasn't questioning the time lost. I just wanted everything to be over with. 6 hours later, I was fading in and out of consciousness. The only thing keeping me awake was a constant whispering from the 3 entities surrounding me. "Sever it and everything will go away." The creature on my right hissed. Then from behind me, "Just use this knife and all will be fine again." I fought their urges, trying my damnedest to ignore them. But anytime I would focus on their voices, I would lose some time. Sometimes 10 minutes, once a half hour. Before I knew it, I only had 20 minutes left. I just had a few more errors to fix and a couple more test runs. 10 minutes left. One more test. There was another error. 5 minutes left. Test. One more error. 2 minutes left. Test. No errors in the code. I sighed a breath of relief, preparing to hit send on the email when there was a sound like a stick stabbing into raw meat. Then a suction and silence. The pain hit a few seconds later when a wave of heat began emanating from under my right shoulder blade. I don't have any other memories from that night. Just waking up face down on my keyboard, completely exhausted. Apparently, I had managed to click send at the right time since I now had 10,000 more in my account than I did the night before. That's what I thought anyway until I checked the date to find that 3 days had passed. I went to the bathroom more to clean up than anything else. I threw the clothes I was wearing out, brushed my teeth, showered, then got out to dry off and get dressed. But as I looked over my shoulder at the mirror making sure everything was good, I noticed a scar right under my right shoulder blade.